Hello, one and all. Welcome to another episode of Baggers Chat. My name is Mitch Pattinson, and as always, I'm joined by Ethan Duffy. It was going to be just Ethan this episode because I don't know if I found the time, but we had a time slot, and we just found the time to do this episode. And of course, we got the win against the Fremantle Dockers. Of course, the final scores were Fremantle 6 goals, 9-45 to Carlton, 14 goals, 14 points. 98. Of course, we were the winners by 53 points in the end. Duffy, of course, you were there. I was at work doing the game. But, of course, trying to keep as much of an eye on the scores, but kind of was watching it as much as I could. But from your perspective, mate, being there, what an experience that would have been. How are you, firstly? And tell us some stuff about the game, mate.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I actually got back on the late flight at about 11:55 Perth time and landed at 5:30 a.m. this morning, and then I had to head to work today. So I'm a bit knackered right now, but it was definitely all worth it because, you know, seriously, like I said just before, I've never been, we've had some good results, especially last year, but I feel like that result yesterday in terms of, we've had those games where we have to win. There's massive games that are 8-pointers that can get us going in the season. And that was it. From the first bounce, the first 10 minutes, I knew we were on. I knew we were on because there was a repeat, stoppages inside 50. There was a good vibe around the ground too, Pato. I remember walking in, there was, Carlton people, their heads are up. I feel like those last two games have given us confidence. I know they were against, lower sides, but, the Gold Coast game, we talked about it. It was that turning point. You could kind of see there was something different that had changed. They've gone back to the basics in terms, I think Vossi said in his press conference, they've simplified it back to, and the players have really bought into it, which is credit to Michael Voss. Seriously, like, what were we, 4-8, looking doom and gloom. He's been under the most intense pressure, and he's been saying in the press conference, we're still, building the string to the bow, and those strings to the bow were shown in yesterday's game because defensively, we're fantastic. Midfield killed them. We didn't have rucks. Our two rucks were Lewis Young and Sauce, and you seriously make a case for him playing every week, Pato. You seriously make a case for him. I'm serious. With TDK and Peter, I don't see them playing together the rest of the year in this side. Like you said, it's the dying position, the ruck. It is a dying position. And with Lewis Young and Sauce, the way they play, as kind of a fourth midfielder and Lewis Young being behind the ball, it's just from that first bounce, because I remember talking to my old man, I said, we got it inside 50, Lewis Young stayed out, and I was like, yes, like this is good. Like they're all in sync. They know what the bloke's going to be. He picked up their key back, so we had more numbers behind the footy while we were up forward. It was just like, that 6-week period for me, I'd imagine you'd agree, it was just blokes weren't on the same page at all. They weren't on the same page. There might have been a guy giving off a handball. He's not ready. They don't follow up the ball, but every single player was in sync. And you look at Fremantle right now, and they're just not in sync. And it shows. It's such a difference in both teams. And obviously both of us have been, the teams that probably were rated extremely high, and we've, obviously been under our expectations. But it's really good to see that we're building up and they're the opposite. They're going down. And what are they, 14th, 15th, which is not good for them currently. Like, I think, you look at their list and you go, okay, but for me, I think our list is a little bit better than theirs. I'm not biased, but you look up forward and then you look, around the ground. It's fantastic to see, Pato, and the vibe after the siren was good. Carlton fans, I remember this. We were sitting at the top, but went down near the cheer squad to like celebrate. And there was blokes high five, and I was high fiving blokes, and that vibe, like that Carlton football vibe when we're winning.
It's good.
There's nothing better, I think, out of any club. Obviously Collingwood, when they're up and about, they're obviously, all getting all excited and stuff. But I think when Carlton are up and about, there's something, a vibe. We're all together. And yesterday was really good.
Yeah, completely spot on. There's nothing better than a Carlton winner, especially with the fans. When they're up and about, there's nothing better. But what I said about their whole, I guess, the ruck, I guess, conversation, because, I mean, the stats, once again, probably this week kind of lie a little bit, because Sean Darcy ended up having 58 hitouts. Luke Jackson was, of course, the second ruck. That was something that we kind of expected. I don't think Josh Trace was really working out. So I think Luke Jackson is probably a little bit better in that second ruck position. But Darcy and Luke Jackson, so Darcy had 58, Luke Jackson had 11. Lewis Young had 10 hitouts.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And, I mean, of course, we expected TDK to play on the weekend, and, of course, he was laid out, so Lewis Young came in. But with Lewis Young being that main ruck, and I know that even towards the end of last episode for the preview, I was saying that I think when we are at our best and they're at their best, we're better. Our ceiling is higher than theirs. That's my opinion.
100%.
And then especially with the ruckman, I think it was a big call from my end, and I don't know if I think the next few years is really going to be interesting to see what happens with the ruck and with that role. But I think it is a dying position, because once again, 58 hitouts from Sean Darcy, that is dominance.
Yeah.
And once again, they lost, we beat them by 53 points, Duff.
Yes.
So it's actually unbelievable to actually see it from that point of view and know that how much, when a ruckman is playing well and getting that many hitouts, they very rarely lose, but they dominated in the hitouts, and we somehow won 53 points. And I think it was definitely down to the midfield. Credit to the midfield to kind of know that we wouldn't win the ruck taps, but we actually still dominated in the midfield sense. But to move on just to one negative out of the game, we'll get the negatives out of the way, because the rest of the episode will, of course, be about the positives. But Matt Kennedy seems to have a knee injury. I know that you know a lot more about the injury, Daff, than I do, but it seems to be a knee injury. As of right now, we don't know the extent of the injury. We don't know if it's super bad. I know that even Jordan Ridley, the game that I was working on yesterday, Jordan Ridley, he had a knee injury as well, and it looked like an ACL, but he ended up playing out there maybe 5 minutes more of the game. Then, of course, he came off, but that didn't look as bad. So hopefully it's the same story for Kenny. But first thing to start off with Kenny, what were your thoughts on his injury? I know that he played a great game up until that moment, but what do you think about his injury, and how much of an impact will this kind of injury, if it is long-term, how much this will affect our lineup?
Yeah, no, it's a real shame, because he definitely set the tone. Obviously, he kicked the first goal of the game, which was a ripping goal, by the way. But no, he's really good. I think he's really found his stride back again. I think most of the side has, to be fair. But it was really disappointing, because I think it was probably later stage of the third quarter. The game's over, so which is frustrating in those games. When you're winning by a bit and then you get an injury, it's like you want it all smooth sailing, but obviously football isn't always like that. But it was kind of a twist. So he got tackled, and his knee kind of got twisted, and he looked in pain, but he was walking after the game. So you never know with knees, because ACL, sometimes guys can just walk on them and they don't know if it's too serious or not. But fingers crossed it's only like maybe a month or something like that, because we definitely need him in the side. But the only good thing about, well, obviously there's no good thing about the injury, but in terms of our sub was George Hewitt. He came straight in and was fit in seamlessly. So I'd imagine Kennedy will come out next week, and I'd imagine George Hewitt would come in for him, because he was really, really good in his part. Like, he just played his role, exact same role, in terms of, obviously they have different strengths, him and Kennedy, but with George, he's a best 22 esque player. So, it's not like we're going to be missing much, but Kennedy's, his impact ahead of the ball, we've been talking about it. When he was playing half back, I didn't really get that move, because he does get on the scoreboard and he attacks with his meters gained, which we've been seeing in our wins. So fingers crossed to him, because he's playing some good footy.
Yeah, completely spot on. Well said, Duffy boy. Especially with George Hewitt, I think it's good that we have a guy, and that's why midfield depth is so important. Yeah. Because you've got a guy like Matt Kennedy, who is pretty much a best 22 player, but you've got a guy like George Hewitt in most other sides would be a best 22 player.
Yeah.
And if he's the sub, there's a lot of speculation about the whole sub having him as a sub. I'm not too sure if that's the right idea, but in that case, it is.
Yeah.
In that case, it is the right idea. So, and it is the right choice. So, of course, George Hewitt came in. I think, mate, I'll be very surprised if Matt Kenny gets up for next week. But I think George Hewitt, it's a good time for George as well, because he needs to start to get some confidence in his game as well. So I think it's going to be somewhat exciting to see how George goes, but also for another name, and that's Paddy Dow. So we don't know if he's going to get a game. I don't think he'll get a game in the best 22 just yet, but he might come back as a sub. And if he is a sub, what's he going to do? What impact is he going to have? So were you about to say something?
Yeah. Well, he actually missed the game on the weekend. He had a concussion the week before, so I'd imagine he'd go in the twos. I personally think George comes in. It depends really what dynamic they're thinking, in the four walls. So you might be right with the Dow as the sub. Maybe we need that midfield depth to cover that hard work, the harder work we have to put in without a ruck. But you come up against a team like Port Adelaide, they haven't had a ruck all year. So they're in a very similar boat right now, because you probably think about it and go, do you need to rush in TDK? Maybe you play him in the twos, or maybe as a sub or something. Don't play him in the full. Like, you have Lewis Young and Sauce against Finlayson and maybe Charlie Dixon or something like that. That's a fair ball game in my eyes. That's a fair ball game. And look at Port Adelaide. They're on a 14-win streak with no ruckman. And they're not picking the ruckman. Like Lycett hasn't made picks. I know he got injured last week, but they haven't had ruckman most of the year, and look at them. It's so unpredictable, and you could see Freo were a bit lost yesterday in terms of, like, Lewis Young still behind the ball, and then it's like an extra defender, and then you've got Silvani, who's more of a forward-based ruckman, going forward with the ball, and his ball use and his game yesterday, once again, is very, very, very good, just in terms of that effort, that not just effort, it's that specific effort. Like, I remember you touched on it last episode. It's that certain effort, it's not like that basic level. It's that, you're one-on-one with Liam Henry. He might get you for pace, but he's not going to fucking stop. And he's not going to linger around, because that pressure, because there's a few times, there'd be a one-on-one, whether it's Lewis Young and, I don't know, Andrew Brayshaw. And obviously Andrew Brayshaw's got the qualities that are a little bit better than Lewis Young. But there's a few times where they turned it over because they knew Lewis Young's on his ass. Young's on his ass. So, and we'll touch on that in the whole defensive structure.
Yep. And am I looking forward to the preview for Port Adelaide? Can't wait for that. But of course, we will now move on to the defensive structure. I know the two names that was 100% kind of, I guess, I don't know the word, but I guess it's mouth-watering in a sense of how they played, is Jacob Wiedering and Nick Newman, but I'm sure that you would have some other names there, David Boy. But defensive structure, I know the Jai Amos got a goal. I think Luke Jackson got a goal. I think even I think Switkowski as well. Walters had two, but that's not a massive impact up forward. But Duffy Boy, defensive structure, how great were we in the defensive system?
Well, you look at the score with 45, and they shouldn't have got the goal. They shouldn't have got the last goal. So we really kept them to 39, and we turned it over near the end. But you look at 6 of their goals, most of their goals were off maybe our overuse or maybe a turnover, which obviously happens because we held up so well. Like, I think Freo, the way they score is that fast running game over the back. And, every time in a stoppage, we were obviously winning most of the stoppages. But when they won it outside the stoppage, I looked straight to the D50 and I'm like, we're set up. They're not going to score. I had that much trust in our back six to set up for the ball to come in. But yeah, with those two names, Wiedering and Newman, obviously Newman played his 100th game, and shout out to him. I think he had 12 marks or something. I think he led the game in marks. So 12 marks, something like that. And Wiedering is just Wiedering again, which is fantastic considering we've got Port Adelaide next week with Charlie Dixon, who's had a pretty decent year. Probably one of his better years at Port Adelaide. Obviously, he's been kind of hot and cold, one of those types of forwards. But Newey, fantastic, 11 marks, 20 kicks, and he's taken on these kicks that we know he can take on. I think we all, like we've been saying with Wiedering, he starts it. He's the start. He's the guy who sets the tone in terms of ball movement. And he was taking on these kicks. I know he only had 11 touches, 9 kicks. He was hitting most of them, and there'd be started chains. And then obviously you look at the other back. I'm just looking through the lineup in terms of back six. Adam Sard, absolute gun. He's unbelievable to watch. I know, we always say it, but it's every game he just finds a different way to impact.
Yeah.
It was, you look at their forwards, really. I think he was on Lockie Schultz for most of the game, and I'd imagine he would have been under 6 touches. I'd imagine he would have been. He did give him
18, but I think but I think that was probably because he probably wanted. I think Longmuir wanted to get him
in the game. Yeah. But like when he was 1-on-1, seriously, they had an impact ahead of the ball, and the score reflects it. Guys like Schultz and Switkowski, they tend to get those 2-3 goals. I know they're not superstars, but they do get on the board. And, you're talking about Walter's goals. They were 2 cheap goals, and they really didn't have an impact on the game. They were late in the game, and, the game was over. Like, tell me a Carlton team in your life that has killed games 3 weeks in a row at quarter time.
I literally cannot name one.
Well, I know we were only 4 goals up at quarter time, but you look at it and it was game over mentally. We were mentally ahead of them. Physically, we were ahead of them. And it was just really good to see. And defensively, really, really good. And just touching on McGovern, he actually had a cork. So he was out for the last 10 minutes. But depending on if he gets up, I'd imagine Marchbank would be his replacement if he doesn't get up for the Port Adelaide game. But it's definitely not a form. I thought Gov was great. He kicked a ripping goal from outside 52, which got me out of my chair. So it was really good, and they're just enjoying footy. That defence, like, remember that game against Essendon? They're all kind of not talking to each other and angry at each other, but now they're all high fiving and getting around tackles and getting around spoils. Like, how good is it seeing a bunch of guys out there at the top level enjoying it? It's just that's what footy's all about, and obviously when you play better, obviously you enjoy it, but. No, it's just shout out to them, seriously, to turn that around. I think defensively this year we haven't been that bad. We just haven't been able to put scores up to defend, have we? Have not been able to score enough. And now look at it. They've scored 45 and we've won by 50 because we're scoring. So shout out to them, seriously.
Yeah, completely agree. Question about Mitch McGovern. So I think it's pretty much a lock that this guy, when he's playing his best, or even not even playing his best, he's very much an important player in our best 22. So you touch on there about an injury. So for thinking for against Port Adelaide, a bit of a sneak peek into our preview.
Yeah.
Do you think Mitch McGovern we might just say you take the week off, give yourself a bit of a rest, because you don't want to have a guy like him go down early in the first quarter? Do we even just try and risk? I know it is quite a risk because you're up against a team like Port Adelaide, but do you even just go down the resting path of McGovern, know that a guy like Marchbank is playing in the twos and can come in to fill that void? Do you think that might be an option that Voss might go down with Mitch McGovern being, like, with a corky as well? You can't really tell. And it might be an injury that halfway through that first quarter he's not right. Do you reckon that's something that Vossi might go down this path?
Yeah, I obviously, ideally, I'd rather have Gov in the side in terms of just keeping that continuity, like we all talk about, keeping that back six, not changing too much. Obviously, Marchbank can do the job, like you said. So if he 100%, if they see him not right, or can't play to the level we know he can, just due to that corky holding him back, then obviously you bring in. I'd imagine you'd bring in a. Marchbank, or you maybe shift Young down back. Maybe, I don't know, you shift him down back and bring in Teddy K. So there's a lot of moves that could be made, but personally, hopefully, Gov stays up because he had a really good game. I think, by foot, we always talk about his impact. When he's on, by foot, he's really, really good. And the whole back six as a whole really took their kicks on. They're risky kicks, but they pull off. When they're off, we're out. And they set up goals, and it's so important. I think people realise how important getting goals off turnover is. Well, I've never seen us get that many goals off in D50 transition. Last year, we were really getting goals out of stoppage and clearance. That was our one wood. And now, like Wassie's been saying, I know people getting pissed off with him saying it while we're losing, but adding strings to the bow and keeping to the process in terms of, getting that, continuity and blokes knowing where to go and how to score, different ways to score. Because yesterday we found so many different ways to score, which was obviously great for us, but Freo were lost. They really did not know how to stop us going forward, which was great.
Yeah, and this is one thing one thing that I haven't really, I guess, accepted enough from what Voss was saying, and it was when he says we're adding strings to the bow, so like you're trying to learn new stuff, and I'm like, mate, but last year we were so good, but now that I'm actually starting to see it all play out, because if you're in a close final and there's 10 minutes to go, and or say if you're down by 30 points in a final, you have other strings to go to.
Yes.
When say we were speaking about, I think last year, those last 4 or 5 rounds, we were found out. So that's what Vossi, because we were so focused on the contested balls, stoppages, attack.
Yep.
But now we've been like, oh, the defense is so good, but we can't score.
Yeah.
But now we're combining the two together.
Yes.
And that's one thing that I don't think I give enough credit to for Vossi is how he has done that, how he has been able to add another string to our bow, so it makes us look a little bit unpredictable. Like, of course, you want to be predictable in terms of performance-wise, but unpredictability is sometimes a good thing as well, because Collingwood do it. Collingwood do it every single week. You don't know what they're going to bring out. But yeah, I think we'll now just quickly move on to the ruck conversation, and we'll kind of move a little bit off the rucks and also onto the midfield as well. So of course we'll touch on how great they were yesterday with Young and Silvani. Once again, I think just the unpredictability once again just backing up their performances, but also to name a few midfielders: Sam Walsh, 32 touches, Paddy Cripps, 29 touches, Sam Doherty, 28 with a goal. He's been kicking a lot of goals recently as well. So
good to say.
Which is good. Adam Chera, he just keeps on doing his thing. Adam Chera, 27 touches, 1 goal. And of course, one more is Blake Acres, which is 23 touches, which I thought he played well as well against his old side. But out of those, probably 5 midfielders, Daffy Boy, and also the rucks, of course, Young and Silvani, how important were they yesterday?
Yeah, Youngie and Silvani are just, I'll just quickly touch on them, but I just think, obviously they didn't play, out of their skin, but they knew what they had to do. They knew what they had to do, play to the rucks, play to their tap, run guys like Darcy around, because Jackson had no impact on the game. He might have, I think he ended up with, how many goals did he kick? 2? Maybe one. Yeah, and that was off a cheap free kick. So realistically, they did their job. That's all we ask. We're not, I think with supporters, we all expect every player to have 30 touches. That's just not how a good team works. Because you see guys like Walsh and Cripps and Chera get 30s, and you go, why isn't fucking Gov getting 25? Or why isn't da-da-da get, you know what I mean? Like, you just got to look at their game impact-wise. They're as good as anyone, because their role was complete, and they won. They won their battle, because Sean Darcy, he's the size of he's a fridge, right? He's a big boy, and he's taken 3 marks. So that shows you, how much of an impact they had in the air. Lewis Young was literally playing as a defender on Big Darcy when he had to, but he also took marks. I was like, Jesus. And that's another player that's adding strings to his bow and surprising us again with his improvement. Because about 4 weeks ago, Pato, we were talking about one guy being improved in terms of Chera, and we said no other players improved. But now you look at the last few weeks, and you go Fogarty, you go Cummers, you go different players, even Akers the last few weeks. You go even, Mackay has added strings to his bow in terms of moving up the ground, which I think he's been good at this year. But those guys were great with the midfielders. Jesus, Pato, how are we 7 and 8 with this midfield? That's the real Jesus, what are we doing? But no, Walshy's back to his best. I know he had 11 kicks and 21 handballs, and Cripper had 5 kicks and 24 handballs. But that Cripps yesterday was that, like, his handball game wasn't like, just like a Tom Mitchell in terms of handball focus always. But he was down and under. Like, he in one-on-one contest, he's going bang, and he's getting that handball out to Chera. That's what we've been dreaming of, Pato, in this midfield. Cripps doesn't need to do the outside work. He needs to do the inside. He's a fucking bull, and he was dominant yesterday, as were the others. I thought Doc was superb. He could not miss that first half. If you rewatch that first half and you focus on Sam Doherty, I don't think he missed a kick. He would have kicked it to me on level fucking 3. So the way he was kicking. Ches, fantastic again. Geez, it's good. It's good to see him play really well. Because I think there was a few, question marks. People get, naysayers saying he wasn't going to be worth a pick 6, but Jesus, I think he's worth a pick 6 now. Based on his performances. And Blake Acres, once again, he's in the right spot. He's in the right spot always, isn't he, Patter? He just finds himself in space. It's weird because he's usually on opponents that may be a little bit quicker than him in terms of other wingers, but he moves and sets himself up in good space, and he's got that size. Like he was on Liam Henry yesterday, who had 30. He's been having 30 the last few weeks, but when it came to the crunch time and it was 1-on-1, Acres versus Henry, Acres is bodying him because he's got the bigger body, and then he gets it out to our runners. And you can also talk about other midfielders. Fogarty was in there a fair bit. He ended up having 17 touches. He provides something different in this midfield too. It's just what we've been crying out for this whole year, because we were a little bit slow. And Cunners, can we just talk about Cunners? Like, he'll never be talked about in the AFL media. We'll accept that, but he's not that type of guy. Like him and Fogarty, ground ball gets. I've never seen two players cleaner.
Yeah.
They those ground ball gets and then you fumble and you turn it into a 50-50. These guys are turning it into goals. We pick it up, the handball off, they're gone. One motion, you're out, and you go, how the fuck is Jack Martin on his own or Charlie Curnow out? Because their ball movement's so quick and silky, you know what I mean? And people might go, oh, Freo. They were off yesterday, obviously. But that was due to our game. We killed that first 10 minutes, when a team's just all over you. And it's just mentally we can't score. They kicked 2 goals in a half, Pato. They beat Essendon 2 weeks ago with 5th at the same ground. So compare the pair. But it's really good to see the midfielders and Matty Cottrell again. The way he's developed in the last 2 years is like really, really good to see, because I think when he got drafted, I think we all thought he was kind of be one of those cult heroes that pops in here and there, but. No, he's seriously good, and his running capacity is second to none. He's our best runner on the list currently.
Yeah, I mean, to touch on Fogarty, Cottrell, and of course Cunningham as well. So Fogarty had 17 touches.
Yeah,
that's probably a generic midfield forward, but also transition through the midfield, which I love to see. Cottrell 17 touches, first game back since his suspension, which is always good to see him back. I think he's a best 22 player, 100%. Yeah. And David Cunningham, he's just that Rolls Royce player.
Yes,
he's that guy that could play midfield, but he's a match winner as well.
Yes.
Like if it's the fourth quarter and you need someone to step up, you can almost rely on David Cunningham to do something special.
Yep.
And it's just a different aspect of the Carlton Football Club. It's not the
same stuff. It's another string to the bow. Like
it is.
Like Mossy's been saying, but you continue. It's just so good to see that all connect. You know what I mean? Like it all works together. Just about the process. I know we hate saying the process because we've been a part of the fucking process for 8 years. But we've still got to improve. Because last year, everyone's like, we're happy with that. We're not happy with last year. Well, obviously, we were good last year, but you've got to keep going.
Yeah. And that's one thing about also Michael Voss is making that big call a couple of weeks ago with David Cunningham and Lockie Fogarty coming in. Yep. Like that was a big call that we've been crying out for probably about 2 months, but finally they did it, and they actually had the balls to do it, and it's worked out well. Like we don't know how the season's going to play out, but it actually worked out well, and it's been working out well for the past 3 weeks. So, of course, to touch on our last line, which is, of course, the forwards. So, of course, we touched on Lockie Fogarty and Harry Mackay and Charlie Curnow to a stretch, but one name I would like to touch on, and that is Jack Martin.
Yeah.
When he is not injured and when he is out on the park, he is I believe he is probably our most important player. He is another, like if you call the David Cunningham the Rolls Royce, you could call their Jack Martin bloody, I don't even know, the Range Rover Duffy Boy. So you can see Jack Martin. He's just that guy that is. He put Alex Pearce. That was the one. I reckon that was one of the moments that I watched, and it was when he put Alex Pearce to the ground. That's a big body. That's a key defender. That's the captain of the football club. Yeah. And he just went, fuck you. And just went bum straight on the floor. But out of those names, like, of course, Harry McKay and Charlie Curnow, but particularly Jack Martin, Daff, how good were they yesterday?
Oh, forward line pressure. I think the first quarter we had 8 tackles inside 50. And I always think back when I look at the tackle count, I always look back to that damn Essendon game where we had 33 tackles. We had 8 inside 50 in the first quarter. So, if you had that pressure in those games, it just makes such a difference when you have repeat stoppages and defenders can't waltz out of your forward 50 and hit a target, Jordan Clark's and getting their cheap touches like Hayden Young. They're all under pressure the whole game. They could have been, even when they had space, they always in the back of their mind were thinking, fuck, is someone here? You know what I mean? That perceived pressure. Because when you start a game well, I know in local footy, professional footy, you go, fuck, is someone on my ass? And then you start rushing. It's just it's just fantastic to see. And, Harry and Charlie have been working extremely well together the last 3 weeks. I'd love to, get a bit of media love for Harry because he's been kicking goals and 20 touches for a big guy. And Jesus, the things he can do is unbelievable in height and size. Like, this is like, if he played in the 1990s, like, forwards were never built like that. Obviously, we had superstar forwards like Dunstall's and Gary Ablett seniors and all that. They couldn't do what he does in terms of run up the ground, run faster than most of the other players at his size. It's just great. And Charlie's just doing Charlie things. He just goes, yep, I'll just kick 3, go to Optus, yep, kick another 3, yep, righto, and he's leading the Coleman still. So, but he's been playing better the last month, in my opinion. This has been his best kind of month. Not like he wasn't playing good, but he's taken that extra step in terms of, now we know that's Charlie Curnow and that's his game. And Jack Martin, like you said, with the whole Land Rover or Range Rover little line there. You are right though. Like he's everywhere. He was in D50 at one point, Pato. I couldn't believe it. The ball goes up, and I'm like. And then Jack Martin's come in. I think Sean Darcy's up under it. And Jack Martin comes flying over the top and D50. And then 1 minute later, he's down the other end setting up a goal. His running capacity as well is really, really good. And like you said, he used his body for a guy who's quite slight in frame. Like, he's hitting blokes hard and tackling and he kicks goals, which I love about him. So, it's good to see he's played 3 weeks. Touch wood. Hopefully he stays fit because, Jack Martin's cars are as reliable as I don't know what.
I reckon his calves are almost as reliable as a forward territory, which is, of course, my calves. So we'll move on. So this is, of course, the last 7 that we'll touch on. Very quickly, Daffy boy, tell me your best on ground.
Best on ground for me is Sam Walsh, 32 touches. Obviously, it was 32 touches, but the impact was enormous. You could say plenty of names. I think Chera was a close second, in my opinion, or could have been first, really. Like, they were all fantastic. And I think Chera had 700 metres gained, which is unheard of at 27 touches. That's like amazing. But Walshy was great. His impact by foot was great. He was hitting bodies hard. It's good to see him doing that too, because he's got that size now. He's not just a runner. He's getting inside. He's hitting targets. He's, stiff arm and Sarong and stiff arm and Brayshaw, which is good to see.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was going to say maybe Adam Chera to a stretch, but I think I have to go with Sam Walsh as well. He was absolutely fantastic, and he's found some form the past few weeks. But of course, that was the final segment of the episode. I know that it was a little bit of a shorter episode today, but it was just good to get out some content before the big week, which is, of course, Port Adelaide this week. We want to try and get this review out into the public. And then, of course, we will move on now to the preview, which will, of course, come out later on in the week. But make sure to all the viewers, make sure to like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Make sure to try and share the channel around. But, of course, on our podcast platforms as well, make sure to try and give us some love as well. Daffy boy, to you and to all the blue baggers out there, the baggers!
Woo!